In 1931, German director Fritz Lang released one of his most famous feature films titled M. The film concerned a child killer and the havoc he had on German society and local authorities. The movie commences in Berlin, where a group of children are playing an elimination game in the courtyard of an apartment building using a chant about a murder of children. A woman sets her table for lunch, waiting for her daughter to return home from school. A wanted poster warns of a serial killer preying on children, and the scene alludes to the murder of the woman's daughter. Lang considered M to be his favorite of his own films because of the social criticism in the film. In 1937, he told a reporter that he made the film to warn mothers about neglecting children. The concept for M drew on real-life inspirations, including the murder sprees of German killer Peter Kruten, also known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf, and Fritz Haarmann, a murderer who committed the sexual assault, murder, mutilation, and dismemberment of at least 24 boys and young men between 1918 and 1924 in Hanover, Germany. Now, this film came out 80 years ago, and since then, the world has seen hundreds of non-familial abductions across Europe and North America in cases that seem to mirror M, with the serial killings of John Wayne Gacy's Reign of Terror and that of Peter Woodcock in the 1950s. Children who unassumingly go about their day and who are snatched away when they are out of sight from their parents. Now, a few months back, I posted a story on Reddit about a 1-month-old newborn named Harpreet Paul who was allegedly abducted when her parents left her alone in an unlocked car while they were shopping and found her missing when they returned half an hour later. Now, a lot of people responded to this post, the majority of people confused by the parents' actions. However, there is also a lot of commenters defending the parents with an argument I hear all the time associated with these sorts of objections. It was a different time. However, this got me thinking, was it a different time? As it seems fairly evident that for decades parents have been warned about the dangers of letting their children go out of sight. 40 years ago, the world was not necessarily any safer for children. So what made the world 30, 40, 80 years ago a different time, where children could play alone in the streets and babies could sleep alone in cars carefree? Now, if we look at Harpreet's case in particular, we'll find that leaving a baby alone in the car was not a typical behavior. In fact, locals were enraged after hearing about Harpreet's abduction, and this suggests that leaving her alone in the unlocked car was by no means typical of parents of the 1990s, at least by Western Canadian standards, as there had been many high-profile child abduction cases covered by national and international news. For example, Michael Wayne Dundee in 1986, Cheryl Hansen in 1974, and Ethan Platts. In a 1998 study of parents raised by pediatricians at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, nearly 3/4 of parents said they feared their child might be abducted. 1/3 of parents said this was a frequent worry, a degree of fear greater than held for any other concern, including car accident, sports injury, or drug addiction. Findings from this Mayo study and others consequently lead us to believe that the media has actually created a social problem in which Americans believe that their children are routinely abducted by individuals unrelated to their families. In reality, the cases that dominate the media are not at all representative of the empirical findings regarding the abductions of children in America. Other studies found that the number of child abduction cases reported in the news had significantly increased during the past 5 years, from 6 in 1998 to 50 in 2003. These reports came from USA Today. News outlets have been reporting on these cases for far past the early 2000s and 1990s. CBS reported the most child abductions out of any news outlet, with 42 cases between the years of 1970 and 2013. ABC reported 38, NBC 29, and CNN 21. So as you can imagine, the concept of parents keeping a closer eye on their children is not as modern a concept as people think. The conviction of Ian Bradley and Myra Hindley of the Moore murders in 1966 has been seen by many as the event which led parents to allow less freedom to their children, as well as making parents and children more alert of the fact that there are also dangerous women, not just men. Strangely enough, the brother of one of the victims recounted that his murdered brother had been regularly warned not to accept offers of candy or rides from strange men. What I would argue is that the safety has not changed. Children were no safer 30, 50 years ago than they were today, nor were parents necessarily less afraid of the circumstances of neglecting their children while they played or went about their day. What perhaps has changed is the media and their tendency to manufacture fear. In crime media theory, there is a term known as mean world syndrome. Mean world syndrome is a cognitive bias in which people perceive the world to be more dangerous than it actually is, due to long-term, moderate, or heavy exposure to violence-related content on mass media. This could apply to a variety of media facets, be they fiction or reality. The fact of the matter is, American children are no more likely to be abducted today than they were decades ago, and much more likely to be returned safely when they are. The threat of abduction has always existed in parents' minds, as the threat has always been there. If you're curious to see how cautious parents are now, as opposed to 30, 50 years ago, take a look around your neighborhood and see how many young kids are alone riding their bikes or in their yard, and question how different these circumstances actually are to those of missing children from a different time.